Okay, so we are going to take a look at the interview Seth Rogers and his private investigator did with News Nation. So let's take a look for those of you who have not seen the video or the full interview. We're going to take a look at it together.
Investigator who is now working with him on the case. Thank you both for joining us. Seth, I have to start with you. First of all, I can't imagine being in your shoes. I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this, and I'm grateful that you're joining us tonight. I think our viewers need to understand Sebastian was not physically in the home with you. You are no longer married to his mother, but I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, and if you know anything tonight that you can share with us.
Just know that he's still missing. I know that there's been really no leads that have been shared with me by law enforcement.
When you say there's no leads, are you working with law enforcement? Are they communicating with you?
Not communicating with me. They're communicating with anybody who'd be my private investigator.
Okay, Heather, I want to weave you into the conversation. You started working with Seth. Why are you working with Seth, and what can you tell us so far?
Well, I had received several phone calls, people asking me to get involved in the case, but I wouldn't do it until I was invited in by a family member or law enforcement. And I did end up getting that phone call. A friend of mine said they had talked to Seth and he was looking for somebody, a PI to hire, and he had referred me. So I called Seth and here we are. That was about 2 weeks ago. And yes, law enforcement was standoffish at first with me. And I think that's just because, they had some, Seth can be hard to deal with because he's going through a lot right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of trauma. So what can you tell us so far about your investigation? What have you learned? What were the circumstances of the home, of his mother, of his stepdad, the thud that they heard?
Well, I can tell you that from my investigation, I believe that this is a domino effect of events. I believe that we have to go all the way back to December and January are going to be key months. There are a lot of events.
I just want to jump in. I mean, she's not directly saying it, but she is most certainly implying that she's on the path that I was on, that they are going very far back, and they are pointing the finger at Katie, to say the least.
There was a lot of turmoil surrounding Sebastian. We know that Chris Profit was in the middle of a custody battle with his ex-wife. We know that the daughter did visit over Christmas break. We know that Sebastian was with Seth during that time. We know that that there was a DCS referral in, I believe, February to the Stafford home. That call was likely determined to be unfounded because the case was closed and that file is restricted at this time. I know Seth has tried to find out more about that call and he has been unsuccessful.
That right there was another bunch of questions that I had on my list as well. What has been regarding the CPS, and which is why in my last video I had talked about interviewing some people with CPS, because I would really like to know how your biological child can file or make complaints, or there is mandatory reporting done that involves your biological child, and you are not informed or made aware of those allegations. You were not interviewed. I don't understand this. You know, Treat Squirrel, I have thought about that. But a lot of me thinks that, yes, he got into this marriage and realized it was beyond his capacity. But I also think then once the heat was put on with his case with Nina and the terrible things that occurred and happened to Sebastian, that if those things came to light in a hearing, he was also worried that would hinder his ability to have visitation and custody of his daughter Faith, which, based on Nina's interview or story, I think that should have been the least of his concerns. And I don't know who he loves or what he loves, but I certainly don't think that he was in a position to be caring for children. And I think he wanted freedom and a lifestyle of freedom. And I don't know a lot of men that could go extended periods of time without seeing their child. And I would also want to add here that with the postings by the private investigator regarding the alibi, and I have been trying to get answers, but I think I got my answer. There's evidence he was at the campground the evening of Sunday. And there's evidence that at 5:15 a.m. he was at work. Is there evidence of the entire rest of the window? I don't know that I believe there is. And I believe if I read what Heather had stated, it kind of sounded like I'm going to rely, I've gotten this much, the rest I'm leaving up to law enforcement to fill in the gaps. And my theory of this case, again, my opinion, allegedly, as much as Chris, is my least favorite person on the planet in this case, I do not believe he is the one that may have hurt Sebastian. Do I believe he might have been complicit in getting him out of the home or away from the home, or maybe helping with things that might have transpired prior to the police getting involved? And I'm going to sound a little crazy saying this out loud, but I also believe that that they might have, that I hate saying that I hope Sebastian is still with us, but there is a part of me that believes that there is a chance that they made a second contact with Sebastian, and that I believe happened at a later time after the investigation had been ongoing. That's as far as I'm going to go on that, or everybody's going to just leave the channel because they think I'm just Looney Tunes. But I believe with him asking Katie to, with the call to the sheriff and various other things, I believe he worked really, really hard to try to control the situation, control the narrative. She might have been really freaked out and panicked, not knowing what to do. He didn't trust she could keep her story straight yet. And he went into, hey, I got to make sure this situation is under control because I could be affected in this. And people make really rash decisions when they're in crisis mode. And so I believe, because he has a natural detachment to Sebastian as not just a step parent, but you can just hear it. And the way he speaks of him and things like that, he has this detachment that he stepped in to kind of take control of the situation because she was not capable of doing it. And I think he's terrified of her having too much time on any interview platform to speak and go off script, because if she is posed the correct questions that she is not prepared for, I believe she will fail, and everything will blow up. And I don't believe I have watched a single interview where the right questions were asked. I will say in the Smiley Story interview, it was extremely long. She was not, she didn't know that they were going to come on her show. And I think that the element of surprise is to catch the interviewer off their game and not have them so prepared. But I will give her credit. She asked some very, very hard questions that a lot of people would be really nervous to bring up or talk to somebody about, or sound accusatory. So I am in no way trying to put her efforts down, but I have seen a lot of the other interviews, and they might as well wrap them up in blankets and hug them and sing Kumbaya. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And I'm really glad to hear that the PI is, and we're going to jump back into the interview. I'm glad because she's following the trail of the breadcrumbs, and I say things like, I wish I could get the answers to my list of questions, because honestly, like, if I could have asked this question myself a month and a half ago when I had the question, maybe everybody would have been that much further ahead. So I'm super glad to at least hear that she is basically loud and proud coming out and saying, I'm on this track. And if you're going to go and get into the dirty laundry of what was going on in December, January, February, that is telling me she doesn't really believe that he just walked out the door on his own free will. And I don't think Seth believed that either. And I think Seth believes that his son would have called him and he would have went in to help. Thank you for not thinking that I'm crazy. And yeah, and you get these, I think the Proudfoots are done on their interview circuit for the most part. We've seen now that this alliance was words and nothing more. But Seth is still on the interview circuit, and I just want to grill him. And honestly, what I have thought many times, should I just send one of these other bigger podcasters my questions and they will ask them? But then I have to be able to say, you can't forget this. You have to be this specific and direct and clear. And so to me, it's a matter of, I just watch and I just hope they ask. But this so far, this interview is showing me a little bit of good news. Thank you. I feel like I'm on some of these groups and I'm watching and I'm just like screaming, like, do you guys not see what's going on here? Or I'll see, people talking and I want to be like, and honestly, if I were her, I wouldn't have even done the interview, as much as I appreciate that we get the opportunity to watch the interview and learn the information, and everybody wants more public information. Honestly, if I was the private investigator, I am not letting them know that I am on their trail. I'm not going to stop them from doing anything out of their normal habits. I want them to keep going on their merry way. And, so, and that's why I think that there's a real possibility, if somebody was pretty skilled and talented, the right detective. And I wish it was somebody with, even TBI is like FBI, basically, somebody really, really good to get in there with Chris. Because I think if they have the right person to go after him, I think he would agree to an immunity deal if he was not a participant in the actual harm and maybe an accessory after the fact, as far as trying to, control the situation. And I think he would do the deal, because I think he right now is just angry at himself that he is caught up in this mess. I think he's trying to protect her because he made some rash decisions that day or night and ever since. And I think that when he went and he talked to Seth, maybe he didn't know Seth was going to go make that public comment. Maybe he was sticking out the olive branch to get, try to get, in communication with Seth. And then Seth did speak publicly. And then maybe Katie was like, what are you doing? I don't know. I mean, that just popped in my head literally right here. I think there is a chance. And I kind of, as much as people want to believe it would be him because, you've talked about, abuse out loud, and, you're arrogant and you're rude and you belittle people and talk down to people and you're narcissistic and all these things. That doesn't make you a killer. And I believe he wants to get away from Katie as fast as possible, but I think he's stuck. And think Madeline McCain, think John Benet Ramsey, and the people when they know that somebody close to them is guilty, and in the crisis moment they involve themselves, and then they're stuck with each other. They're stuck with each other to save their own skin and their own reputation. So, if it was proven that he literally did not do anything to hurt Sebastian, and it could result in the return of Sebastian and the person responsible being charged, and that person was able to testify against the person who actually directly did the harm, maybe it is worth a deal. And I don't like saying that because I don't think he'd want to spend a day in jail. So I don't think he'd take a deal of a week or a month. But maybe it is, if it means Sebastian is returned. We'll see. So let's quick jump in and finish up this video.
In doing so. But I've also recently learned that there may have been some talk about Chris leaving Katie. And I feel that probably had something to do with Sebastian. So there may have been some trouble in paradise. To me, these are all things that need to be considered. Could these things have led up to maybe Sebastian just feeling a certain kind of way,
right,
and leaving? If he overheard a conversation between Chris and Katie where Chris is saying he can't deal with it anymore, he's out, whatever, that
right,
could have been motivation for Sebastian to just leave.
Seth, I want to bring you back into the conversation. Was Sebastian safe at his mother's home?
I've heard some things. I have mixed feelings about that.
Were you addressing it with your former wife?
Information that has been brought to my attention has been information received since Sebastian has left.
And the morning after he left, what happened in the home? Can you answer that?
I know that I received a phone call on my cell phone that I didn't get until I got off of work. Everything else would be law enforcement or speaking to Chris Proudfoot to figure out what happened.
Okay, looks like that was it. And I was crossing my fingers. No, we're not talking about Harvey Weinstein here. I am not even, so I was crossing my fingers there because I hoped they were going to ask the follow-up question that I had, that was, to Seth about the day you went missing. And I don't know. My email is public on here. If Seth or his PI ever see this and they, would be comfortable answering questions, I don't care if it's on video, phone call, or by email. And I'm just like, I feel like I've kind of had a good grasp on the majority of things in my mind that happened a month and a half ago. And then a little bit of bobbing back and forth in the past 2 weeks. But then I kind of remind myself sometimes that Harvey Weinstein, you probably didn't hear it, but the next news clip on their page was about Harvey Weinstein's conviction in New York being overturned. So hopefully they try him again and lock him up longer. But so yeah, that's your answer there. But I would love the answers to these questions. And if for nothing else, maybe they will help Seth. Maybe they would help Heather. I don't need an on-camera type interview thing because I think, if it helps give them some direction, so we'll see. I'm really have been reminding myself that, to kind of try to stay off these groups online because I'm one of those people who can be susceptible to getting overly emotional at things people say on there because I get frustrated. I think I see something or I feel very strongly about what I believe. And sometimes it's hard for me when the other person isn't seeing something that to me is clear. But if there are professionals out there that aren't even seeing certain things that are clear, then, I shouldn't be that way. But sometimes I get really emotional. And a lot of these groups have gotten so bad about it's just not about any form of a solution. And it's just and now there's all this just drama about the reward fund. And my opinion on that is I don't believe I've seen many cases historically where a reward made a difference. I believe, and I'll just say this, my opinion is if you're the kind of person who has knowledge that would bring somebody home or save a life and you're withholding it, hoping for a reward, that's messed up. I would like to see, instead of reward funds towards resources such as the canine handler that he was talking about. And yes, canine handler, and I would do cadaver dogs. Being realistic, you should do both. And I wouldn't restrict it to the Hendersonville area. I think there's reasons why they left and stayed gone for so long. A lot of people are involving, family members and things like that, extended family, in-laws, step people, and all that. And I've done all my research on them. And, are they going to be, it's kind of like how I feel about Chris right now. Like, are you my favorite person? No. Do I like you? No, not really. But I'm not all over the internet talking about them because at this point in time, I believe they're irrelevant. Now, could they have knowledge after the fact? Maybe. Maybe Chris needed money. Maybe Chris needed a place to go or do something, and then he reached out to family. But do I think that they knew what happened? No. And I believe that Heather is on the track that my mind is that whether what happened was in the heat of the moment or it was maybe planned to a degree. I believe a lot of it has to do with months and months, because if it got to the point where Chris, shared with Seth there was marriage problems, that means it was happening long before that. So it's kind of upsetting because, you know, it looked like there was going to be a path for Sebastian to be with his dad. And, you know, maybe there was something bigger happened that said, this can't wait. I'm going to lose my husband. Because I agree with one thing that I have seen online since very early on. That Sunday seemed like a child's most amazing day in the world. And I do believe it was probably way too much activity and excitement for even a child that wouldn't be special needs. And a lot of people have wondered if that was a planned last day. And so, do I believe her when she cries? Yes, because I believe that she has some love for her son, and that whatever happened, she probably has some guilt. I I absolutely believe that she never in a million years thought there would be tens of thousands of people with a microscopic lens on them, Sebastian, the area. Yes, like a make-a-wish day. Like, it might as well have been like, you know, like it's like, you know, somebody, you know, was with their parents and something bad happened. Well, okay, let's look at Madeline McCain's case. If you don't know it, um, you know, Google it and you'll find all sorts of stuff there. But they were on holiday. We don't call that holiday here, but it's like vacation. But they went to Portugal on holiday. And, you know, when you hear the father talk about, you know, the when she went quote unquote missing, she, you know, he just talks about what it was like the best day of their life. And it was so relaxing, and, you know, how he looked on at her and, you know, she was just sleeping so peacefully. And I think when he was looking at her, he was looking at her and she was no longer with us. So, yes. And those families, you know, were well-to-do families, like the Ramsey family. And so I don't think that the Proudfoots thought in a million years there would be this much attention, especially when you had the Riley strain going on at the same time. All the efforts were there. And a big part of me wonders if Riley strain had not been found, if all the people that are working on this case, not all the people, there's people who've been with this case from the jump, but if a lot of those resources would never have came in this direction and the attention wouldn't have shifted so much had he not been located. I have a lot. I think that's a real possibility, because I think you know, I'm watching, you know, notifications of other missing children. I think there was just 11, a group of 11 that were located, things like that. You know, and I go every day, I change my mind about how I feel in law enforcement. Like, I just wish I could just scream and just say, do you really have nothing? Because if you really have nothing and you're not holding stuff close to the vest, then Sebastian's army needs to triple in size, and the resources need to triple in size. And somebody needs to hire some, like, interrogators to come in or something, because this is just absolutely ridiculous. And so, you know, I always pray every day for them, like, please, please have more than we know. Like, have more than we know. You have to. And if his private investigator is now following this trail of breadcrumbs, that makes me hope that they had already been on that trail. But I believe the answers to break this open would be through interrogation. And everybody says, you know, do it to Katie. But part of me is like, you got to have the right person to go up against Chris. But never together. And she said she went to wake him up for school at 6, but he wasn't there. Didn't say he is gone. Yeah, I mean, is absolutely true. I went to wake him up for school and he was gone. The way she said it in that interview didn't make sense to me. It was a little awkward. And I've really been kind of analyzing, Chris's use of the word deeply, because I have a huge amount of interviews that I've listened to, and deeply, and how this keeps getting repeated over and over and over again. And I just wonder if he was put somewhere deep. And that was a little bit of the truth coming out. Kind of like where she kept using all the references about movement and running, and how they were so certain talking about him going out the door, leads me to believe that either he was carried out the door, or maybe, they were doing, or something was happening to him and he took off out the door, but was caught, which is why I keep saying, I don't care what anybody says until I see it stated in a court of law, testimony from the trash company under oath that those were trash lights. I won't believe it. I will still believe that those lights look like one going this way and then it goes away. And I believe, what if this is Sebastian and here comes mom catching him and taking him back in the house? Well, I honestly think that because there's also been under the breath statements made that make me feel like he is farther away. And I think that is where I come to the thought process that maybe he was close initially, but now he's not. I believe that his location has changed, which is why I think that a lot of resources need to be devoted, not just within Hendersonville. And I have so many maps that I have delineated locations that would be prime, accessible but hidden, dark, maybe near water, things like that, or bridges, or within, forest preserves, things like that, where you could do things in the middle of the night and maybe, wouldn't be the wiser. And I also, look at like who's, it says a lot to me that they've not been kicked out of this RV park. And as we've seen with other situations, sometimes relationships can be incredibly tight. And a little bit of me wonders if, not that like the camp people were involved, but like that they are not going to say things that would in any way reflect bad on Chris, is the better way to put that. March 30th, had a clear vision and got sick that he was in a hunting lodge or blind between two waterways. That's not crazy. That's not crazy. I don't have any special gifts, but there were a couple nights in the past 2 months where I literally woke up drenched in sweat, and he was on my mind. His face was on my mind, and I feel like I might have had a dream, but I couldn't remember the dream. And I was like, And my thing though is if he's like being held somewhere, that, maybe his mother, took him somewhere, until maybe like court blew over or things like that. And now it's out of hand. Maybe he was being held and that changed because then all this attention came and had to come up with a new plan. Like, we can't take him back now. The whole world is looking at us. The whole world is looking at our house. Everybody wants to know what's happening to him. So, maybe that was an initial move, because I've heard a lot of theories about, was he lured out on the false premise of, hey, you're going to go on vacation to this awesome place, kind of like, hey, we're going to go to Disney World. It's going to be really fun. Trust me, to get him out of the house. And by him leaving by normal means, there wouldn't be any unusual forensic evidence to uncover if he was, if her vehicle was parked in the garage, which is what she has said herself on Nancy Grace. If he was carried and put in her vehicle and left, or he went willingly into her vehicle under the premise that they were going to go somewhere to do something else that was fun, and he wouldn't be the wiser. But then now everything's blown up. Everything's out of control. Maybe that was the case. He was taken somewhere. Let's just, get him out of here for a while. Court's going to blow over. We're going to fix our marriage. And when next school year starts, before then, he'll resurface and he'll go live with his dad before summer or something. But then, the entire world went viral on his case. So now what do we do? Well, we can't bring him back. Everybody's going to want to talk to him. He's going to be talked to by FBI, TBI, the county sheriff, the police department, a psychologist, psychiatrist, everything. We're going to be in so much trouble. And it wasn't supposed to be this big of a deal, but now it is. And now we're just, we're stuck in this mess. So now we got to do something else. We got to do something bad, because he can't come back now. Because if he comes back now, everybody's watching and we're going to go to jail for a really long time. That is a possibility. He had to pass Katie unless hers in the garage. I mean, if she was really sleeping on the couch and then got up and then she moved to the bedroom, part of me thinks the 3-hour phone call was either a planning call or a panicked XYZ happened. What do I do? Saying somebody pointed out, saying that she said, on that call to Chris, supposedly, I can't find him. Well, if you're talking to somebody, your husband, anybody, and you say, I can't find him, and, well, are they going to say, like, what are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Who's missing? What are you talking about? Who can't you find? She didn't say, I can't find Sebastian. Where's Sebastian? Like, what is weirder to me, which makes me which made me lean into them really early on, was not using his name. The rare use of his name being, they basically got to be pushed in front of the camera and like, hey, can you actually talk about the important things about your son that would help him get located? Can you actually say his name out loud? Are you allergic to his name? And like in one of Chris's interviews, I wanted to just say, no, it's not his mom. It's not my wife. It's Katie. Or you could have said, she's sitting right next to you. Who says my wife and her son and that young man and this and that? Like, you're sitting right next to your wife. When Katie called me, she was, running around the house and she's yelling on the phone, I can't find Sebastian. Where's Sebastian? What do you, I don't know what to do right now. That would make some sense, right? but no, you just can't say his name. It's like, ugh. It is weird. It is weird. I mean, who can't say their child's name? And the first thing you should do when you get the opportunity to do an interview with the news, Dateline, a court TV, even a YouTube thing, anything, the first words out of my mouth would be, before I answer your questions, I just want to say, again, my son, his name is Sebastian Rogers. He's 15 years old. He did or did not have his glasses. They look like this. His hair, if it's grown, it's about this long. It might be this color. If you see him, he responds best to this name. Or you should approach him in this way, or maybe keep a distance and call 911. Those types of things. Make note of where you are at in case he runs, the exact location. Like, those are the things I would be communicating if I had the opportunity to get the public's attention. But instead, you're talking about, well, he liked Legos. He loved running, Well, that's not, and it's not he. It should be his name over and over, because you want your child's name embedded in the entire world's brain. I would, maybe that in that one interview she was holding his picture way, way in the beginning. But after that, I would be like, this is my son. You don't even need to see my face. This is my son. This is my son. And I don't care what if there was 30 Facebook groups bashing me to the high heavens because you're supposed to look at the parents anyway. I will still speak. I don't care if every nasty comment I saw, all I would be sitting there doing is hitting reply and posting a picture of my kid's flyer. That's all I would be doing. I wouldn't even be entertaining this nonsense. Let them say what they want. If I'm truly innocent, I don't care what people think. I don't. So you should be getting out the facts about your child and including their name and saying it often. And then you leave the state, possibly, or just really far reaches of the different corners of the state, and you're traveling all over the place, which tells me, like they said at the beginning, it was on the very first interview, Pat Brown did profiling on this, video on this, where she talked about they were just laughing so hard, because it was just so hilarious at the thought that he would actually walk back in that door. Well, of course they can leave and go to Memphis. They can go to all these places because they don't believe he's ever going to walk through that door, because they have some knowledge that is driving them to that. Seth doesn't have that knowledge. That's why he's not comfortable saying, well, I'm going to go into work and do my normal schedule. I'll just search on the weekends because that's what I can do. Because the other parent isn't home should he return. If something is found, he's the only parent that can be contacted. Saying he's going to come home. Yeah. I mean, and she does cry. I'm not saying you shouldn't cry when you're talking, but I'd be, you can be devastated and still get the appropriate information out. And if you need somebody to speak for you because you are that distraught, because you have seen families of, adult missing persons where, maybe the mom or maybe the dad or the sister, maybe just one of the parties is just too emotional. They don't want to get in front of the bank of microphones. If you're going to have somebody else talk to you, at least they can do is say the name of the person that's missing and the physical description and the best way to approach him. So, I mean, none of that makes sense to me either. My granddaughter says if he did run away, that he will find a way and he will get food because he's smart and probably mad. He probably is. Oh, bless your sweet granddaughter. That just breaks my heart. And this makes me think, when people, are just saying some like horrible, horrible things, it always makes me think about the classmates and the teachers, that loved him and his classmates. And, they talk about, how he didn't have friends. Well, it seems like there are kids that are scattered on social media where I'll see a comment here and there about having gone to school. They feel his absence. So if they didn't give him the opportunity to have socialization outside of school, that's on them. That doesn't mean he didn't have valuable relationships in that school. And what are people doing for them to help them cope through this situation and help them understand? Because if my child was autistic, I would certainly go out of my way to try to give them opportunities to socialize, and then also with kids that are not special needs, but also outside of school, like where can he go and he can engage with other children that have autism, but that didn't happen. Oh, absolutely. I mean, children and adults with autism are highly, highly intelligent. Even, with ADD, ADHD, I mean, Asperger's, I mean, the intelligence is off the chain, like smarter than me. I have loved ones with Asperger's and ADHD and things like that, and they talk, and I feel so dumb. I mean, exactly. I mean, they're not incapable of knowing love and affection. And while some, not all, may not want to be touched as much by people they don't know, is that really wrong? I mean, no. Anybody who's ever had a child knows that there's kids that don't listen. They just run amok. They do whatever they want at the playgrounds in your house when you're having play dates, stuff like that. They don't behave themselves. It's just, to make somebody nothing but that diagnosis is shameful. And it would have been more respectful just to say, the absolute facts. Like maybe he doesn't like physical touch by strangers. So if you find him, don't try to grab him by the arm. Don't try to hug him. Make sure you notify law enforcement. You pass that information on. But yes, they would, they know how to survive? Absolutely. Resourceful. Which is just natural for most of us. We become in a terrible situation. We often become more resourceful than we believe we're capable of. So yes, I believe he'd want to try to be dry. I think he would try to seek somewhere where he could be warm. I think he'd want to have food, and he'd find a way. If that genuinely happened and he left on his own free will, the wrong person could certainly take advantage of that situation. But unfortunately, there isn't an indication of that. And, I'm not going to tell you to ask your 10-year-old granddaughter because, I'm not trying to make them traumatized by things, but I have a strong belief that if you left with the mindset like, hey, I'm finally leaving this place, you wouldn't leave without your shoes. And even though they maybe don't have a place where they're going to go or plug anything in, if you're attached to like a gaming system like the Switch, I think he would have took the Switch with him, as well as if he had been lured by somebody on a gaming system. I think he would have took the Switch with, assuming, hey, I'm going to go play, game with this person. And I think he might have even taken snacks. And I don't know that he would have done it in the dark. So, yes, I agree. Space, those I know are not comfortable. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, And I think that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, our children shouldn't believe that they should allow themselves to be hugged and things like that, or forced to have, contact that they don't want anyway. But I mean, there's kids who are not autistic that don't like that. There's kids that are not autistic that, they don't like scratchy things, scratchy blankets. They like fleece. They like just buttery, soft materials. My kids are like that. They don't like nylon or them windbreaker type materials. And they don't like certain noises. They just don't like hearing them. They really bother them. Those are natural things. And so, not everything, relates to the diagnosis. Some things are just typical of far more kids than people realize. Yes, I think maybe he wouldn't have taken his phone if it's like locked down, but I think he would have took the switch. And I think he would have took snacks. And if he felt comfortable sneaking around and taking snacks without permission, as they alluded to, I think he would have taken snacks with him. And I think there is a stronger chance that pretty quickly he would have contacted his dad, and he might have tried to go towards a familiar place. And if that would have been like the school, that is not far at all. And I think that their surveillance on school premises, even at night, is probably lit, the parking lots and such, or the walkways. And I think they would have gotten him on camera if he had done that. And wherever Culver's is, I hadn't located that on a map. So it to me is like if he was going somewhere closer, and he's much closer to school. And there are also gas stations and churches and stuff. And I think that some of those places, while maybe they wouldn't have caught what was going on at the road if a car drove by, if he was trying to like walk up towards the building closer, I think it would have caught him. And the fact that we don't have any evidence of that footage is what leads me to believe it probably didn't happen. But I don't know until what lengths in the beginning they went after video footage at businesses. Because businesses tend to keep their footage longer and are backed up to big off-site servers sometimes, or the cloud, and they can be recovered versus some home systems, they re-record quicker. And now it might be too late to get some of that footage if they didn't get it. Yeah. And I also thought it was odd that Chris said, that he would not have went out. He wouldn't have went out whichever door was, front or back. He wouldn't have went out that door because he knows the neighbor's video would have caught him. Would Sebastian have really been thinking about the neighbor's video camera? Does Sebastian even know that the neighbors have a video camera? That's weird. I don't think Sebastian knows where his neighbors' video cameras are pointing. Could Chris and Katie? Absolutely. So that, I think, might have been a leak of the truth. Like, don't use that door when you're doing what you're doing, because so-and-so's camera would catch that. Yes, and I thought about the lock behind thing, and I've said that from the beginning. I've repeatedly said, like, oh, but he didn't take his shoes, but he had the presence of mind to lock the door. But what I don't know is how those push button coded locks work, because if that's what those doors are, I don't know if you just close it, after a certain period of time, does that lock automatically and you don't need to manually like turn the lock? So that was something I just wasn't sure about, that I just thought of in the past like week, because before that I thought, what do you mean you lock the door? Like, I don't need anything, but I'll lock the door. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, that you just know the camera would have been looking. But yeah, okay, coming up on an hour. I am working on getting a ton of, like, let's call it a doc dump on Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang and some other cases I'm working on, and getting them uploaded into my Patreon. And I have all these documents I need to review. So I'm getting those in there so I can read the criminal complaints and the amended complaints. I love your name, Cotton Candy. Oh, man, I love it. What if Katie didn't agree with Sebastian going full-time as Seth, and Chris and Seth teamed up just to make it happen to try to frame Katie? I've had, yeah, I used to sell real estate too. But maybe I've used them, and I guess I didn't, so that is very interesting. Exactly. Like if you had to punch the code to lock it and it didn't automatically lock after a certain point, then I definitely believe him walk out the door voluntarily, because I don't think he would have locked it behind him. I don't. And yeah, I don't know, Cotton Candy. I'm hoping that Chris reached out to Seth, and maybe Chris wants to talk. And I don't know if you were here earlier on, but I'm curious if maybe he didn't know that Seth was going to turn around and on live video that would then go viral say, I'm going to align with them, because maybe Katie didn't know that Chris was talking to Seth at that moment. Because the way, Seth interpreted it obviously is kind of like I called it, like it's not what, it was made to be. Like there isn't anything happening, they're not here and they're not responding to emails purportedly. I think Chris talks it definitely, yeah, it's possible. I mean, when you're in a relationship with a man or a woman for a long time, kind of like with your teenage children, you can notice things about their faces when they're not telling the truth. And in most interviews, she does a lot to not show her face, except in the super beginning. And she seems very reserved and limited on what she wants to respond to and how she wants to answer. And it's typically as brief as possible. So for one reason or another, I believe her talking and the way she handles a lot of the interviews are very controlled. But short of that on Patrol Live, I think the Chris and Katie's interview circuit is mostly done. I don't foresee them doing another interview unless there was a major break in the case. And I don't mind learning the information, like I said, that they're, going in a certain direction, from Heather and Seth. But I think a little more should be held to the vest, despite what the public wants. The point is to bring Sebastian home. It's not to make us, pacified. So I would think that, if you have reason to believe that who is involved or potentially responsible, I wouldn't even allude to it, because you want them to continue to go on their merry way while you continue to mount your investigation. Yeah, and I did a video on 2 videos, part 1 and part 2, on this alliance, Cotton Candy, and I did mention the possibility that when, Seth sent him emails for things like the canine handler, and he used the word Chris's approval, if he was more talking about because it was going to cost money, and it would cost Chris and Katie money as well, because maybe he's trying to share the expense. And they're not responding because it would involve them getting money. But, my understanding is Chris's family does have money, but they're clearly very far removed, trying to stay out of the situation for the most part. And I don't really see that they're going to probably fork up money, to Chris to then help. And so something is stinking to high heaven. Yeah, cotton candy. I think, it's easy to, it's children sense so much more than we know and overhear more than we realize. And they're really affected by it. And when a husband and a wife, or a mom and a boyfriend, or a dad and a girlfriend are having marital issues or financial issues, we like to think they're not hearing the conversations, because we go in our bedroom to hash that out or talk about it, or we think they're asleep when we're talking to our partner on the phone about, our issues. But I think they know more than we think they know, and I think it affects them a lot more, because even if he had, maybe despite what Chris said out loud that he did to Sebastian, that doesn't mean Sebastian didn't love him. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't have hurt Sebastian if Chris was not in his life. Just because that love may not have been reciprocated or received the same way doesn't mean it didn't exist. So if he heard, possible talk of divorce or separation, it could have been greatly impacting him. And yes, there is the military background, and that's really hard for me because I don't really know, but I know you can get PTSD for certain things, but I don't know, if they saw active duty. I don't know, the specifics of that, and if there, I have heard that she has some mental illness, but I'm not saying I know that for a fact. And no, I don't know if any of the parents confirm that. So that could be speculation. But yes, I mean, I think that you can do an interview and show emotion and you can cry. But sometimes that could be out of guilt. And I think everybody should be guilty, because when all is said and done, there was a lot more affecting Sebastian, I think, than everybody was realizing. And there wasn't enough being done to shelter him, but I think maybe they're getting somewhere and they're actually digging into some things. And I don't know that, if they're not giving up the money, that they would be guilty per se, because, to me, it's either guilty knowledge or just frankly, just really messed up to go so far away. I mean, if you really were so worried about, somebody potentially threatening you and coming to your house, there's places a lot closer to your home that you could have just went to feel a little more comfortable or safe. But I don't think that the internet would be as wild as it was, and the finger might have never started going in her direction had she never left and continued doing what innocent parents of most missing children would do. I hope you're right, Cotton Candy, because nobody wants to think that a mother, a father, or a stepfather are capable of half the theories that are out there. Very interesting. A Watts theory. That's very interesting. Yeah. And so, I would just say that I hope that, if Seth continues to do interviews, which I don't think is like the worst thing in the world. I just really wish the clear, direct, concise questions would be asked, and the best answers would come out, to help Heather maybe move in the right direction even faster. And maybe the answers would say you're going in the wrong direction. We don't really know anything. Everything is just our thoughts and perspectives, but we do know some facts based on what has come out of people's mouths as far as, you know, what happened, things that have happened to Sebastian, and maybe some of the elements of things that were going on within the house. And no, I don't think you could 100% rule out leaving willingly or running away, but I think that there just would need to be some shred of evidence that would lead someone to believe that. And at this point, if it's anywhere close to home and it surfaces at this stage in the game, I think I'd be leery of it. But we'll see. We will see. So yes, I have a lot of work to do though. Getting a lot of these documents up on Patreon for some of these other cases, and I am going to hope that we get some really formidable updates from the powers that be soon. And God willing, like I said, law enforcement knows more than they're sharing with us. So people who are saying they were getting deaths. I don't know if I know who that is. But I don't know if you saw, I did a video yesterday and it was on a different case. Tristan and Brittany Hull. Towards the tail end of that video, because I was not doing a like case update like this yesterday on Sebastian, I simply shared a video with photos of him and prayers and things like that out of respect for the 60-day mark. But if you go to the video yesterday regarding the case of the Hulls, towards the very end of the interview, I do explain what I was able to, factually recover regarding the person, regarding why the people that were coming into search recently said we're not comfortable doing it anymore because we have concerns for our safety. And it didn't seem like a lot of people were answering that. And so I was able to do the research and find the substantive answer. And I didn't show a lot of the documentation here publicly because I didn't want to get into that on that day yesterday. And I don't really want to even go down that road. But if you look at the tail end of yesterday's video, I did let everybody know the source of why that beef was taking place. And it's not speculation. It's not alleged. I saw the court documents with my own eyes, and I still have them. So it's, but I respect the people that were involved in saying, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel safe, and I'm not going to get into the reasons why we had to back off. I don't want to make the situation worse. But I did think that, that law enforcement, if I don't know if they'd even do anything, but, they need to do something about anything that results in hindering the search. And I don't know if they can, but yeah, if you want the tea on the background of the person that resulted in all the beef that created the cease and backing up of the people who were coming in to search for Sebastian, you can go to the end of my video from yesterday. it's like called Hulls. Why is this happening type thing in the title. And you can get kind of towards the end of the video, and I spilled the tea on that because I didn't want to, I intentionally am not a fan of clickbait, so to speak. And had I put the truth of that situation in a headline, yes, I might have had 30,000 people watching to learn what that information was, but I just didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like doing it, so that's all I'm going to say. But if you want the information, yeah, scroll at the end of that video from yesterday. Yeah, I think it was a good decision. In the News Nation interview that Seth allowed Heather to speak on the updates and some of the case facts, because I think, she's used to that, and most people are not used to handling those things and crafting the way they're going to respond to something. And when you do those live interviews on the YouTube streams, you can be really caught off guard. And in some cases that can be good for the interviewer, but in some cases it's not really good because sometimes it just doesn't get you the answer and it goes down a whole nother path. And then you got to bring somebody back to focus on what you're trying to get the information on. So I'm glad that, Heather participated in the News Nation interview. I don't anticipate her jumping on every podcast because I think a lot of those calls, he's got cell phone connection to those various interviewers now are creators, and he texts them. And I think if they want to talk to him, I think he's just willing to talk and they just jump on. And it is what it is. But unfortunately, most of those calls, which sometimes can be 20, 30, 40 minutes to an hour long, and questions aren't happening, answers aren't being given, and there isn't further movement happening. And I was all over yesterday asking, how much is it for the canine handler? How much would it be for the cadaver dogs? Trying to get away from I don't think that the focus should be on a reward because I don't think it's going to bring an answer. I think it should be on valuable resources and vetted resources. And I say vetted because if you go to that end of that video from yesterday, you'll understand why I say it's important to vet the people that are involved in this situation. Stand up for Chris like she did. Oh, thank you, Cotton Candy. I appreciate that. Yes, I'll just add on here because I will eventually do just a video dedicated to helping people understand what my channel is going. What my goal is, and my goal is to hopefully build a community, build a team of people who are not just looking at missing person cases, but missing person cases, missing children cases, but also some of these heinous situations, hopefully coming to a place where we, can maybe bring some people home, build a mountain of resources to pull from. And I hope at some point that this channel grows to a place where, like I have on my Patreon, you are different levels, when you go to, if you've maybe never been on Patreon, but it's like information sharing, but then there's all those different membership levels. And one of them in my case is going to be it's like the community member, because those are the people that I'm hoping will take things seriously. And I want to eventually have a team of people who are working just as hard digging into these cases, reading all of these court documents that can be rather voluminous, working and engaging in our own private side chats, trying to work through some of our theories, hopefully bringing in guests. Like I said, I really wanted to talk to and hope to still find some child protective service workers who aren't with CPS maybe anymore, that would be comfortable being interviewed, things like that, and maybe eventually turning this into more of a panel format that would maybe consist of not just me, because I don't love just talking to myself and then the chat. I also I like to engage and hear other people's thoughts and opinions and bounce things off of each other. So I hope at some point, down the road that this can be, 4 to 6 faces on the screen, and we're engaging together about resources and solutions, and yes, breaking down the cases and monitoring the cases. But like earlier today, I had a call to action to Montez Hurt, 19, missing out of Kansas City, Missouri. Got a video on him. Horrible situation there, but a lot of hope he'll come home. His grandmother is in desperate need of help to get people from the St. Louis area that she knows, get them shuttled over to Kansas City on the other side of the state, so that she can bring the people that want to search with her, because she doesn't have that mountain of people and support in Kansas City. And so she's trying to do this all herself. And so I'm hoping to really create an important, I want this to end up being a resource in and of itself. So yeah. But I really want to try to get into these situations to figure out, how some of these things can be caught sooner, how some of these things can be identified. Are there processes that need to change within different organizations? Are efforts being directed in the wrong place? Things like that. Maybe creating, databases of reputable resources to help in various parts of the state, but also maybe having a team together where, if we're scattered throughout the country, we can have more boots on the ground, because, we might have someone in North Carolina, someone in Chicago, and somebody over on the West Coast that can get a little more involved in some of these things. So it is very, very much a dream and a goal that I am super passionate about for a whole lot of reasons that with time, maybe you'll learn about those reasons. But so I'm hoping to build those things. And that takes time and that takes a lot of effort, but I don't want to be just a channel where everybody is just coming and they're just getting the latest scoop. I really want to go beyond that situation. And the people that I want to hear from are the people that, are putting thought into their efforts. And I want, to eventually have a certain team where they're looking at all the resources that I'm looking at, all the documents, the articles, and being able to do the research to kind of, because there's cold cases I'm working on that, we're talking 30 years of materials. And the people still are gone. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of effort. But I think there's value to be had, and I just don't want to be some kind of entertainment channel. So I really hope that anybody that is interested in being part of a genuine community, that wants to do those things, and really try to make a difference in whatever way we can. I hope you stick around, with me, and, hopefully eventually this will become, just a really great collaboration opportunity, because there's so many amazing intelligent people out there that could be really amazing resources, but they don't have, huge news stations behind them or big firms behind them. So they don't really have their voice taken into account very often. But I think as a team of many voices, a lot more can happen. So my intent is to absolutely not have this be a one-man show, because I deeply, deeply want to have people that are just all working for the common goal. So I'm hoping for the moment where, there's fruits to the labor and you get to see a family, reunited or getting justice or getting their loved one returned, whether it's to lay them to rest or, get them the treatment or, therapy that they need to heal from whatever trauma they just went through. Those are the moments that I'm hoping to be part of. So got a hefty rest of the day going. I definitely hope you'll tune in. If I am able to finish up, I was going to later go over the actual criminal and amended complaints of Jessie Vang and Katrina Bauer, because she did not have her hearing today. It was a private meeting between the attorneys, and that's all regarding the case of Elijah Vu in Wisconsin, the 3-year-old. And so everybody can get an understanding of what the allegations really are in that case. And that family, they had a search again today at 10 o'clock. And that community is just doing so much. But I do want to go over those complaints and the amended complaints, because Katrina, Tuesday next week is going in front of the judge, and she is going to ask to be released. And honestly, like having the bond at 15 grand, I thought was too low. But she's going to ask to be released. So I'd like to give everybody a refresher on that, because these are two people that need to see the path to justice. And I bet you'll agree once you've heard the complaints and understand what those all entail, and they were amended. So more was added. And if you have not watched the video that I told you to go to the end of yesterday, I encourage you to watch the whole video, because here is a husband and wife who thinks what they did is going to fly under the radar, and it's not. Not on my watch, it's not. So hopefully you guys, some of you might be in here for the long haul with me, and that is going to be so awesome. Otherwise, always check the community tab on the YouTube page as well, because the community tab always has more faces to spread the word, or small case updates or links that are important. And so I just wanted to get that out. But I've gone longer, I think, than I've ever gone. So I'm going to hop off for now. It's getting pretty late on my end. Thank you so much if you tuned in, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day.